Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist Redemption. A little quick side note before I get started. I would like to say, I am sorry if this is going up a little late. The Blacklist Redemption kind of got pushed back. I don't know if that's everywhere thing or is that just here. I don't know, that might just be a US thing. Might just be an East Coast thing for all I know, because I know it was a basketball game or something, one that was on, so a lot of stuff got pushed back. This as well as Grimm got pushed back. So I'm saying this might be going up a little bit later because maybe the episode aired elsewhere, Thursday. So, but nevertheless, just kind of wanted to include that at the beginning before I got to the episode. But that's not important. Let's get right into the episode. A very good episode dealing with a place, because it's all started with a plane crash at the beginning, but apparently it's it was not an accident. Obviously the public thinks it's an accident, but apparently it was done by the US government. Apparently everyone that was on the plane was already dead. There were dead bodies put there on the purposes of making it look official, because if it was an empty plane, it looked very suspicious, because apparently they're trying to see what Russia's up to or something like that in the episode. So they kind of faked a crash landing, and basically Scotty and her team is to look into it. This is part of some operation known as North Star, where Scotty's like, oh, I don't know anything about it. You talked to Howard about it, huh? Howard never mentioned anything about it, which this gets Scotty thinking if Howard's never talked to me about this operation, what the hell else has he been hiding from me? Which she kind of dives into, which I'll kind of get to kind of separately. I'll kind of be feeding towards that at the end. What I'm going to do is focus on the main episode, and that deals with a place in Russia known as Independence. It's a little small town. It deals with the whole situation of a program that the Soviets kind of created back in the day, where basically they'd implant people, they make people be full-blown Americans. It's kind of like the TV show The Americans. If you've never seen The Americans, great show. I need to catch up on. I'm super far behind on everything. It's currently on right now, so. But nevertheless, it's a situation where it's they're adapting this American lifestyle, getting to know what it's like to live in America, pretending to be full-blown born Americans for the sake of, obviously spying and stuff like that. The program kind of died out, but now it seems that it's alive, but in a different shape or form, in this shape of this place called Independence, where we have Nez and Tom sneaking in there undercover, which for me, I look at it as this is Tom, has to be the best job for Tom, because it's literally Tom pretending to be someone else, pretending to be someone else. It's dude, there's so many layers of how messed up that is from an undercover perspective. But for Tom, he makes it seem so flawless. Obviously, he has to adjust to it immediately, because they're oh, this is us watching and testing you, so you have to fit. You can never break character. You should always become this person that we're saying, this alias that's yours now, become that person, live that life. So Tom, in his particular case, he was a janitor, and Nez had her own life. She's living with her, obviously not real, but in this particular case, her brother. And kind of adjusting to these lives, and even going to parties and stuff, trying to be social, living their lives. That's the whole point of the program, to be used to your life, so to live as an American, so that when you get to America, you can adapt and just blend in with society. At least that's what you think at first, which I thought was kind of interesting, kind of going back to how Tom's very good at lying. He brings up that story about how him and his quote-unquote wife met and everything, which she was very enamored by, because you see her later on sneaking into the shower with him. He's whoa, what are you doing? They're not watching. She's yeah, I'm not doing this because of them. I'm doing this for me. I guess because she liked the fact it's oh, you're very convincing and everything. Which she's no. I was oh, Tom, how are you going to handle this? It's no, he was up front. He's no, I'm married. She's wait, what? You're not supposed to be married. He's yeah, I lied. So I was okay, let's just stand in the shower and just make it seem like we're doing something when we're not. I was you go, Tom. Even for the sake of a mission, no infidelity. Go right ahead. Tom would have to be. Tom's kind of upfront lately. He doesn't hide stuff from Liz anyway, so he'd have to be upfront about it, especially under the circumstances of them being a family too. So he definitely can't do that. But things with this situation are even more complicated than we originally thought. It's not even a situation in The Americans, where it's oh, they're pretending to be Americans. What it seems in this particular case, they're actually replacing Americans. Basically, they're getting plastic surgery to look like these certain people. The identities they have aren't fake identities, because everyone's under the impression these are fake identities that they're living, so that when they get to America they could just adapt. But it's like, no, they're pretending to be someone else so that when they can replace the real person that they're pretending to be by getting plastic surgery, obviously speaking English, not speaking Russian, just adapting everything there is about this person's life. That's why they're like, yeah, you have to live this life 24/7. Granted, we don't know what happens to people who don't, because there was that lady in the episode who kind of broke down because she got tired of it. It's like, I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm always being watched and tested every time. It just became too much, because you have to remember someone else's life. You have to forget who you all were and become this person entirely. Like I said, that's not a problem for Tom, because Tom can, it's something he's very good at, And I guess truth be told is he owes that majorly to, well, the Major, because the Major kind of made him that way. So I know we haven't crossed paths with that lady. I forgot who she was. She's someone from Tom's past that was connected to the Major. She worked with him, but she kind of helped Tom. I think, was it her who killed the Major, or was it Tom who did? She kind of set him up, but then the Major's dead, so now she's kind of off on her own. I think that was last season. I'm pretty sure, right? I think that was sometime last season was the last time Tom crossed paths with her. But nevertheless, I'm just kind of wondering where that whole situation resides. But I kind of get the feeling like I remember her popping up later on if she was working for someone else. I could be completely wrong. But in this particular case, it seems like the people they were replacing, they did some cold hard replacing too, because it's a situation of once you go there, you're not meant to come back. So they ended up killing their replacements, making it look like suicides. One dude hung the dude he was replacing. The others shot them to make it look like suicides, left suicide notes. Cause basically they're doing a bombing attack or something like that. That's why they particularly picked these particular people, one's an electrician and stuff like that. And the point was to make it look like, not make it look like a Russian attack, but make it look like it was a domestic attack. Like Americans themselves were performing the attack, and then later on killing themselves and saying like, we did it for this particular reason, kind of covering their tracks and Russia's involvement in those situations. So it was a very interesting, it's a very interesting, covert spy type of situation. The situation didn't go down the way I thought it was. You had Solomon showing up with all those people. It's like, okay, guys. I'm not a negotiator. And so, cause I know, I'm supposed to say something like, your lives matter and blah, 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 stuff like that. People care about you. And it's like, so could you please just put the guns, take the keys out of the ignition. Just, let's handle this situation very nicely. No one has to walk away in a body bag. And they're like, no, screw off. And he's like, okay. So now I didn't want to have to come to this, but I have to give the green light. They're like, green light, pow, pow, pow. All three of them dead. I'm like, wow, that was... And kind of going back to it, it was also the situation with Tom's fake wife in Russia. Like I said, it seemed like she was kind of warming up to Tom, but it was a situation where it's like nothing is legit. I think it was more so like, hey, we can make this work in this whole fake situation. But then it was kind of like, well, she obviously felt something was off with Tom. The fact is he was asking too many questions and stuff like that. She's actually the one who reported him near the end of the episode. I thought it was kind of interesting. Like she had a gun on Tom. I was like, okay, is she going to let him go or something like that? Are he going to talk her out of it? And it's like, no, the situation ends with Nez hitting her with a van. I can only assume she's dead. If that didn't kill her, later on you end up finding out that basically there's a crater there. So the whole place was scrubbed so that there was no trace evidence about it existing. So, but this episode we learned a lot about Nez too. For one, not to mess with her. I love that dude was being such a creepo, asking all those questions, obviously testing her like he's supposed to, but then he started touching her leg and everything, and she flipped out on him and kicked it, kind of was putting him in his place, adjusting his tie, and sat back down. It's like, were there any more questions? And it's like, Nez, you're scary, and I like it. It turns out that basically they were being drugged, hence the rashes and stuff like that. It was like stimulants or stuff being put in their drinks to kind of make it's kind of reason why she was a little agitated. Normally she probably would have handled that a little more calmly, but she kind of got a little ragey like that because of that. Granted, she still would have probably kicked his ass or something for touching her like that. You don't touch a lady without her permission. But I'm thinking she wouldn't have gone as she would have been a little more subtle with it, I guess. like a situation like, oh, he's nearby, and you just karate chop him to the throat and make him go. It's like, oh my god, he's choking or something like that. Maybe something like that. But I also got what I wanted to. Once again, because I love characters, and it dived a little bit more into Nez because Tom was asking, like, so how do you know this about the drugs and everything? Because she's like, oh, do this and that to kind of readjust your body to from what they were pumping is full of it. He's like, how do you know? And maybe this came up originally when she originally popped up in the blacklist, but was like, the fact is that she was in the military back in the day, and she's like, after seeing or being a part of everything that's ever happened, you kind of medicate, and then you try to find out what other medications work. So she kind of knows what works, what doesn't work. But the fact is, she brings up the fact is that she got clean because of Howard. You see Tom actually trying to reach out to her, be like, oh, want to go out for a coffee or something sometime? And she's like, maybe some other time. And at the end of the episode, we see her kind of falling off the wagon again. And like, because Nez to me never seemed like the type of person that has attachment. She never really seemed like she cared about anything. But now we see like she actually does. Like she cared about Howard because Howard's the one that helped her kind of get her life back together, kind of got away from drugs, got clean. He's the one that gave her this job. He's also the one that kind of just gave her hope because she had just kind of given up on, hence doing drugs and stuff like that to kind of probably numb herself. So we see that she's kind of falling off the wagon. But tie in with that, like I said, the whole situation with Scotty asking questions coincides with you have Tom freaking out. He's going to his dad. He's like, the fact of the matter is, how do I know you're really in the right mindset right now? Because the fact is you haven't been taking your meds. He's like, oh, the fact is I haven't taken my meds just means I'm that much more clearer. Then you have Scotty talking to like the CFO or whatever of their corporation, and she's asking him questions. He's like, I can't say anything. How? Because basically Howard gave him some money through some offshore accounts and stuff like that. Once again, more stuff that Scotty didn't know about. And then he's like, I can't tell you anything because Scotty's like my brother. And he's like my brother? He's like, Solomon's there. He's like, okay, let me tell you about like my brother. The fact of the matter is, when you had that moment before you're about to die, you had it flashed before your eyes type of situation. He's like, well, that didn't flash before me. What flashed before me was a nice pair of legs. I'm talking about Susan. And the fact of the matter is, he's like, yeah, the lady who saved my life. So yeah, she's my brother. So for her, if she asks me to, I will chop your head off. And it's like, wow, Solomon, I didn't know you were so caring. I mean, granted, I guess it's a situation where it's like, it's not only that she offered him a job, she legitimately saved his life because he was about to be killed when she saved him back, obviously last season on the blacklist. So, but it's kind of interesting because I just never knew Solomon had such strong ties. Like I said, it's a good episode. It's a good show because it's like we're diving into everyone else's background. Obviously, we get a little of Nez. Now we're seeing like more of Solomon. We see where kind of his loyalties lie. And so basically, it leads to this CIA guy that was kind of hired by Howard to do something. And this guy's like, okay, so what were you hired to do? He's like, find your son. And it's like, wait, you shut your damn mouth. You're not supposed. Why would you? I mean, granted, he thinks Howard's dead, so I guess he feels like there's no need to sit. But it's like, dude, come on, keep your damn mouth shut. And so now Scotty's like, yeah, my son's alive. And I found out that Howard was looking into our son. It's like, oh, and Tom's like, I thought you said your son was dead. It's like, I thought so too. Well, I thought you said that your husband was crazy for still looking for him. It's like, I did, but maybe he wasn't. This means my son's still out there, so I gotta be looking for him. It's like, oh, dude. And now Tom's flipping out because Tom is already in a situation of like, because he's already heard all this stuff of like, don't tell Scotty that he's really her son, because it's like, for one, you will never get the truth about your past, but it's also he doesn't know what she'll do. I mean, obviously she's her mom, so she wouldn't. It's not like she'd do anything bad, but at the same time, it's still a situation of like, you can't trust Scotty, so she's very unpredictable. But then you had that final twist of the episode where combining what we know about independence. Now you have Howard. I'm about to call him Harold. Howard is like, yeah, I don't think Scotty's actually your mom. I think Scotty's a Russian agent that killed your mom because his mom was like, Scotty was in an accident like 30 years ago, like sometime after Christopher disappeared, and she was in the hospital for like 4 months. That's enough time for someone to replace her, because obviously he's got suspicions about Scotty and stuff like that. A lot of her, like as we saw in the pilot, he was looking to her background and everything, and he thinks like that's not the real Scotty. He's like, no, there's no way that can be a Russian agent. But it's like, dude, what if that was the case, dude? Oh, dude. Now, like, going forward, it's like, it's hard to say who to believe because it's like, is Howard just being paranoid? But I mean, what we've seen today, like in this episode, it's like there is 100% validity to it because as Tom found out, it's like, yo, Scotty knew a lot about this situation beforehand, so it's like, maybe she's like deep cover, or maybe, like I said, maybe Howard's just overthinking this situation, and that really is Scotty. I mean, we would just have to wait and see. But what if that really wasn't like Tom's mom? Like, what if he finds out that it isn't his mom and it's just like, holy crap, what would you do? Like, she's pretending to be your mom for this long and pretending, because that means, because you know how many layers that has to be to? For 30 years, she had to pretend like she cared about a son that's not even hers. I mean, granted, that shows you just how committed, like, they, like, put the brainwashing there to be, like, be this person. If that's the case, like I said, we don't know, because he brings up the fact is that, they're trained. He's like, because the fact is, Scotty hasn't been the same person since the accident, because that was around the time Christopher disappeared. It was like 2 months after Christopher disappeared. But like, in his mind, he was like, I didn't really look too much into it. I didn't think much about it because of like, in a situation where you lost a child, who wouldn't be, a different person. So very good episode, bringing up some very interesting things like that. I'm very interested to see where we go from here. Like, oh, that was just such a good little twist in it. I was so excited about that. So, very interested to see where these developments take us, where Tom decides to go from here. It makes you wonder, how much is he actually telling Liz? I'm also curious, will there be a little bit more crossing over, at least Liz-wise, with Megan Boone, when the Blacklist is also on it at the same time? I think it's a situation where they're probably trying to keep the production schedules about the same, so that, like, things don't get revealed too quickly on the Blacklist Redemption that might also tie into the Blacklist as well, or vice versa, so just kind of throwing that in there. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.